A showdown is already underway on Capitol Hill as lawmakers return from the holiday season. Last weekend, House Speaker Mike Johnson reached a potential deal with the Senate to stop a government shutdown. Since then, House Republicans have voiced their displeasure in the agreement by Johnson. He's now doubling down on his deal, all with the clock ticking. Joining me now is congressional reporter with the Hill, Mychael Schnell. And Mychael, first of all, welcome back. Let's get right to it. What are the biggest hurdles facing House Speaker Mike Johnson to avoid a government shutdown?
Hey, Mark, look, now what Congress is going to have to focus on is some sort of continuing resolution. We're back to talking about another stopgap bill. And that's because while Johnson and Democratic leaders struck a deal on top line numbers last weekend, that's all good. And that's important for the government funding process, a very significant step. But we don't have enough time to use that top line deal to avert the first of two partial shutdowns by Friday, January 19th. So what's going to be needed is another continuing resolution. And that is going to be a major hurdle for Speaker Johnson and for the Senate to get it over the finish line in time to avert a shutdown. Now, look, a number of lawmakers are recognizing that this stopgap bill is going to be needed, but there are still a number of open questions about what it'll look like. Will there be additional policy included in it? A number of conservatives want to see border security linked with the government funding deal. And the number one question, how long would a continuing resolution last? Would it go to the end of January, to February, to March? These are all questions that Speaker Johnson is going to have to answer in the coming days. I will note, though, he has not yet commented on the prospect of needing a continuing resolution.
Mychael, for those House Republicans that are trying to get in the way of this deal, is there that one thing, that one part of the deal that they are stuck on?
They don't like the top line deal because they don't like the levels that it was written at, right? They argue that there are not deep enough spending cuts. These were written, the top line spending deal announced by Johnson and Democratic leaders is largely in line with that debt limit deal that then Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck with President Biden last year. There were spending caps included in that debt limit bill. And now Johnson and Democrats are saying that, we are going to write our bills at these levels. Look, when that debt limit bill passed last year, there were a number of conservatives, a very large number of conservatives, who voted against it on the House floor because they didn't believe that the spending cuts did enough to cut spending. So now they're just still airing those same talking points, arguing that it's spending too much. They should have cut spending more. A number of them are upset that there's no border security provisions included. So their opposition sort of comes from a number of different areas.
Mychael, this chatter that some Republicans might remove him from his speakership, is that gaining traction or is that just rumor?
It's not gaining traction right now, Mark. Look, there are a few individuals who have floated this idea. Congressman Chip Roy, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, sort of throwing it out in the air. Chip Roy has said that he's not taking motion to vacate off the table. But this is not something that I've seen a very large appetite for, at least at this current juncture. We have to remember back in October when those 8 Republicans banded with Democrats to kick Speaker McCarthy out of office, that plummeted the House into 3 weeks of chaos, dysfunction. There were 3 weeks when legislative business could not take place in the House. It was a really tough time for Congress. And I think that a number of lawmakers are nervous about finding themselves in that situation once again. So, emotions are high right now. That always happens with a government funding deadline around the corner and with a shutdown prospect on the horizon. And some folks are, putting motion to vacate in the conversations. But at this current moment, I don't think that there's enough of an appetite for it. And I don't think we'll see anything immediately.
Mychael, how are Democrats responding to this, and what could we see happen in the next few days?
Yeah, look, Democrats are, in terms of the government funding aspect, Democrats are saying that they are not going to accept some of these border security provisions that, when you talk about government funding and the supplemental and negotiations in the Senate over unlocking Ukraine. Border has really become a key part of this year. Democrats are saying that they are not in favor of some of those provisions that Republicans are championing. A number of those provisions were included in H.R. 2, which was the sprawling border and immigration bill that Republicans passed with only GOP support last year. It has since not moved in the Senate. It was dead on arrival in the Senate, a total non-starter among Democrats. Now we're seeing a number of conservatives again push for H.R. 2 and provisions in H.R. 2 to be included in the government funding fight. This will still be a non-starter for Democrats. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how those asks and the aspect of border security affects these efforts to fund the government.
Mychael Schnell, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.